Okay, we're now live. I think we're about 3 minutes early, Joel. But that's okay because we've both got stuff to do. Okay, this is a live stream podcast that it's being recorded as we're streaming. Um, and it is a service that I'm trying to provide to the jewelry industry free of charge to our uh, observers, our guests, our listeners. Um, you, the whole idea of being able to do this live stream is so that people can participate live and be able to chat us questions if you happen to be engaged right now through YouTube live, then you should be able to chat, at least to me. I can relay your question to Joel or attempt to answer it myself. If you find this content visible, I would love to keep it free to all the subscribers and make it a useful resource in the jewelry industry. Let me just quickly explain the Benchworks podcast. We're doing three different tracks. One is business, one is tech, and one is bench skills. The idea here, the premise I have, unlike a lot of the show, a lot of times bench content will be added to jewelry industry shows or events. And a lot of those are simply put there to get more retail jewelers into the show. So the bench jeweler tracks are more like meant for bench jewelers who are working for a retail jeweler. Well, the premise of my whole podcast here is that a lot of bench jewelers may be working for a retail jeweler right now, but would actually prefer to have a business of their own. And that's why the three tracks. We're going to talk about business. We're going to talk about tech skills that actually can help the bench jeweler, and then we're going to talk about actual bench skills. All right. On to today's podcast, we have Joel McFadden, a well-known jewelry industry leader, one of only three mentor jewelers that were ever named by MJSA, and you have probably more accolade to take up the whole damn podcast if we tried to go through all of that right now. But Joel, you have recently transitioned from, correct me if I'm wrong, primarily trade work and doing it in a home studio, and now you've recently moved into a retail venue, high traffic area retail venue. So what we're going to discuss today, and hopefully this will be helpful to other people, are the trials and tribulations, the obstacles, the successes. What did it take for you to make that transition? And go feel free to ad lib.
Cool. Thanks for having me on, Gary. I think that your podcast is going to be fantastic because that's a question that I get a lot at shows and events is that how can I get out of my garage or out of my living room? And it's an interesting experience for me because I had my own 4,000 square foot retail store years and years ago, and then I downsized and I was in the New Jersey market. And in 2020, I sort of decided I didn't want to do that anymore, and I more or less sold that business and decided I was going to pseudo retire and just work for other people and not have the stress of all that. And I spent about 3 years working for other people, and it didn't go too well.
I
It was
remember
frustrating.
we've been friends for a while. I think Joel, I was one of your pressure relief valves during
Oh
that
yeah.
time.
Um, and then I started dating a woman who was interested in the business and wanted me to have my own business. And she encouraged us, and I was working for a award-winning designer who was not really a good guy to work for. It's interesting when you go to work for somebody else. What you look for is 9 to 5, get a paycheck, go home. And I never found that. I didn't find that when I was working for other people. They wanted 9 to 6, 9 to 7. Can you work a 6 day a week? Can you take work home? And then the real crisis was July, about 3 years ago. My employer didn't pay the staff. one month because he just felt he could get away without paying anybody. And so then all of a sudden, all of my fantasies and beliefs about working for somebody else was sort of fell apart. They were just gone. It was very frustrating. So, you know, at that point, my girlfriend said maybe you should just start your own business again. And I was literally in an apartment in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, doing work mostly for other jewelers. We had these shared offices in the downstairs of my apartment tower. So we could meet clients there. We did meet a few retail clients there, and that went pretty well. And, that was not a bad life because I was making decent money. I was working when I felt like it. But I think the struggle was that I was literally getting up, having breakfast, and then going and sitting in my living room at my bench and working. And sometimes I'd work really late, sometimes I'd work early. I don't know. It was okay, but there was not any uniformity to it, and it was what it was. I could make a living. Um, Money came and went. I had a lot of freedom to do whatever I wanted, but it wasn't something that it was sustainable, but wasn't long term goal oriented.
Right.
So, you know,
I'm assuming that the first time you started your retail store, it was a lot like mine. You really didn't know what you were doing. You took it step at a time. I know my evolution from working in my home, doing Saturday markets, evolving into national level art shows, and then finally I evolved through one, two, I had two retail locations before I actually took the big plunge, moved right downtown in the center of Eugene, Oregon. All that took, I'm going to say, decades, if not years, to accomplish. And so I'm kind of assuming the first time you went retail, it was like that for you. Would that be correct?
no, the first time I went retail, it was really strange. I was working in Massachusetts at the IJO prototype store. So I was working for independent jewelers organizations corporate. Um, and I was pretty happy with the job.
Hmm.
Um, it had a lot of perks and bennies. We had a completely part of my job was developing a system to pay an in-house jeweler.
Hmm.
How do we pay an in-house jeweler? How do we develop custom jewelry? Now, this is 1990. So we're still carving waxes and hand fabricating everything. And custom is a big thing, but weren't a lot of jewelers that had the skills to do custom. So I built up a custom business and did that. Um, and about 5 years into that, the ownership of the actual store changed hands. And I mean, gosh, I'm going to share this story because I think there are people out there that can relate to it. When the new owner took over the store, he was somebody who we'd worked with. He had been the manager, and he came in and says, "Hey, I've bought the business. It's good news. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut everybody's health insurance in half. I'm going to have to cut your bonus pay in half and put a freeze on wages and cut some of your hours." And everybody was like, "Okay, we sort of relate to that." You know, and we like, yeah, we're a team. We're gonna just deal with this. And then the very day that he said that afternoon, about 4 or 5 hours later, his wife walked in. Who would actually have to forgive us? We're working today. His wife walked in and showed us the pictures of the house they had just bought on Cape Cod.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say within a year, the entire staff had left.
Right.
Um, my problem at that point was that there weren't a lot of other jewelry stores I could go work at. There really were no jewelry stores in the area I could go work at. And my wife at the time was in law school. So I had to figure out what I was going to do for a year. I had a little over a year, I had to figure out what to do. So I went, this is kind of an interesting story. It's how I got to be who I am. I went I decided I was going to quit, but I didn't rage quit. I did some things. I was just methodical about it. So I saved up a little money and I found a space that was a block away, literally across the street. That was 400, 600 square feet, something like that. Negotiated to rent it. And that's one of the things I want to talk about today. The difference then, that was 1994. So I rented the space. I already had my bench and my own tools and equipment. Um, my ex-wife negotiated legal services for some jewelry cases. A guy hand built us some jewelry cases, and I quit and went across the street and opened up my own store. I had 12 rings and a pendant, and literally my plan was to work out of that space for a year and then leave the area and look for a job. So the first client I got was my old boss because he suddenly didn't have anybody to do his repair work. So that got me for the first 3 or 4 or 5 months. And then I started getting more and more retail people in, and business just took off. So we did 65,000 the first year. And when that was done, I was just like, I don't want to stop doing this. Um, Within 5 years, we were doing 1.25 million, and I had 13. I had 12 people working for me, so it was kind of crazy. I think it was just well, there's something else happened, and the interesting thing was a lot of my knowledge just comes from just being lucky. So IJO was going through this transition, which sort of made it explode. That ended up creating things like Hearts on Fire, came out of this whole explosion, which is another story. But what was interesting was I had a sales rep walk in one day because I just showed up on JBT, and she looked around. She says, you're an interesting story. You don't have much inventory. You're not traditional. But she says, you should be in this group called Skull. And I'm like, well, that sounds interesting. So,
Hey, let me interrupt before you go on. Just for people that don't know, IJO, is that Independent Jewelers Organization?
yeah,
Okay.
independent jewelers organization. So I worked for them for almost 5 years, and then I left. And then so I was there. I got invited to a Skull conference, and it sounds kind of weird. Skull's a strange name. But we went to that, and I ended up being the smallest store Skull ever let in. But the fact of the matter is that because I had worked at IJO and I was across the street, Skull was a competing trade organization. They wanted to support me in any way they could. So um, the first thing I got was a large, relatively unlimited memo from Hearts on Fire, trade accounts with all sorts of companies, and Skull just opened a lot of doors for me. But probably the coolest thing that they did was I got into a Skull group, and there was about 14 different stores throughout the United States, and actually one in Great Britain and Scotland. And they shared their books. They taught me how to do things. We talked twice a month on a long conference call where we just got ideas and stuff. And then I got access to all sorts of very, very successful jewelry stores. Um, so yeah, that was how I got my initial start the first time.
Right. Well, how do you think that experience informed your recent move into a retail venue?
Well, so we were working out of the apartment in Chapel Hill, and a friend of mine said, "Why don't you come to Fuquay and look around?" And I came. My lady and I drove to Fuquay Varina, which in the 1980s when I was here before, Fuquay Varina, North Carolina was nothing there. It was just a little dinky town, and I drove there, and it was a completely developed city. And it in Holly Springs were this highly developed area just south of Research Triangle Park in Raleigh, North Carolina, and there was only one jeweler here, and they weren't really high end or anything like that. And I thought, well, we'll go there. So we ended up. I went into a pottery shop because I figured a guy in a pottery shop would know the market for handcrafted goods and talk to him. And he called us up that night and said, "Hey, you know what? I'll rent your room if you want."
Hmm.
So we literally rented 100 square foot room, just big enough for Bonnie and I to put my bench in and sit there. And that was our first year. And we did pretty well there. And then we just outgrew that. So then we moved to I think it's 300, 200 square foot space in a lawyer's office where we met clients. And then we outgrew that pretty quickly. And then I took on an apprentice, Jeremy, who's behind me. And then we moved the shop into my living room. So we just took over my whole living room and kitchen. I mean, ultrasonics next to the stove, polishing machines next to the window. And that way we could have two benches going in Bonnie's office. And then we just met clients at the little office.
Right.
But, that was just a frustrating, untenable situation because we'd have to go to meet clients there. We had no visibility. But what's interesting is when I had been in Skull and IJO, I learned a lot about formulas and demographics and how to research demographics. So I did demographics on the region. And for example, the place where I am now, Holly Springs, which is 5 minutes from where I was before, there's no jeweler here at all. And it's about 40,000 people. I forget. You look it up, you go to the state, you can look it up through the state department, stuff like that. They'll give you the demographics for counties and cities and towns. And it has almost 140,000 average household incomes, which is pretty high income. No jeweler, 40 plus thousand people. And this is the second or third fastest growing region in the country.
Hmm.
So, I sort of had this, we should probably open a retail store. Jeremy behind me was really pushing, we need a retail store. He pushed me a lot. We got to have a retail store, get a retail store. So that's how we got this far. And then we just started looking, and we thought like 6 months from now would be about appropriate for us because we were looking at the finances. And we really didn't have the volume of business. We really don't even now have the volume of business to afford the space that we found. But, you know, you have to consider how much more business you will get for visibility.
Hmm.
So, visibility is a big thing. You and I have talked about that. When you work out of your house, you don't have any visibility. So all your marketing has to be pretty social media, and you have to make an effort to market.
Hmm.
Then when you end up like I am in a downtown area, people see you every day. I don't know, 100 people see the window here every day
Right.
and are curious what's going on. And so, yeah,
So balance like boosting posts on Facebook and Instagram, balance that expense with your lease,
right.
and insurance. Here, that's another thing though we can talk about. Did you have to get a business license from the city that you're in? Do you have to have insurance? Do you have to pay for parking at your store? What are all the costs that you can think of off the top of your head that are associated with this retail venue? And then a person who is considering doing something like that, balancing that, do you think there's an easy way for somebody who's just stumbles into stuff like I did? Easy way for a person to do those cost comparisons between just boosting the shit out of, social media.
Well, there's a traditional formula in the jewelry industry, which does, unfortunately, the jewelers don't share these formulas that well. But once you get inside a group like Skull or Continental Buying Group or even IJO, they tend to share these things. And one of them is an exposure formula. And it used to be 10% of your gross projected sales should be spent on rent and marketing.
Hmm.
And the theory there is that if you've got a low visibility place like your living room, then you've got to spend a lot of money on marketing. If you have a a high visibility space like this one, then you don't have to spend much money on marketing.
All right.
I would say today you have to raise that number to 20%. So I think that 20% of your gross projected sales should be spent on location and marketing. And so,
Yeah, the number I remember when I was in retail, I was more, well, I'm still in retail, but when I had a venue downtown, I think we targeted about 4% marketing revenue. And you say
Yeah,
projected revenue, right? 4 to
great.
6%, I think was, but that didn't include the lease. It was just, local newspaper. Back then, print media
Right.
was still viable. You could advertise in the local newspaper, say a sizing special, for example, and people would come to your store because they read the local newspaper. Um, would you agree that, I mean, this is kind of a tangent conversation, but do you think that um, like print media is like pretty much dead?
No, um, we have a little magazine here in town. I've like I said, like, we've been here 33 days now.
Mm.
So it's kind of an interesting situation because we opened up on the 10th
Not a lot
of
of data.
December.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what's interesting is I had somebody walk in the store and say, "I saw your ad in the magazine." I'm like, "What?" And then I
Uh-huh.
was somewhere else at the grocery store, and somebody said, "Hey, I saw your ad in the magazine." And
Huh.
I go to the UPS store, and they said, "I saw your ad in the magazine." I'm like, "What are these people talking about?" Well, we have a magazine that they send out about 20 copies of. It's living. It's a lifestyle magazine, living in Holly Springs, and they have like park schedules and school schedules and stuff like that. The owner of the magazine, when a new store comes in, he just makes up an ad for them and doesn't say anything. He puts it in there.
Ah,
And I was stunned at how much attention that got. So I'll be marketing with this guy. It was pretty clever
pretty
of him.
clever of him. Yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds like.
Because I'd never heard of the magazine before, but
Right.
the proof was in the pudding that the day it came out, three people mentioned it to me,
Right.
and but I think one of the realizations I had was when I was in Massachusetts and opened my store, we had a local newspaper that told the local news. And I had an ad in that newspaper every day. And then eventually I had a billboard and I did radio. There was also a radio station that did local news. I was on that too. And I spent a pretty good bit of money on marketing, and they were goofy ads and stuff like that. But I don't think those options are available to people anymore. So I think even more so, it's important that you have a visible location. I think if
Hmm.
you really want to thrive, you have to have a visible location.
Would you? Well, I think a lot of people might argue with that, and right now, myself, I am operating totally online. And I had a really good year last year, except my December kind of died, and I'm
Yeah.
and I'm still waiting for things to pick up a little bit. I think, you know, what could be a factor in the jewelry industry is the horribly escalating or increasing prices of precious metals. Is that something that you're worried about right now?
I am worried about it, but so far it hasn't really affected our clientele. I mean, honestly, as a custom jeweler, I don't know. Bonnie, what percentage of our customers bring their own metal? 30%, 40%?
Yeah, I
Eh, eh,
just I just
eh,
boosted a post on Instagram encouraging people to bring their metal, which often, just
Okay.
what you
So
say.
about 10% of our customers come in with their own metal.
Yeah.
So I guess that's probably going to rise. Um,
Yeah, like I said, I've just created a little campaign soliciting for people to uh,
and then
saying
I,
that we
I
can recycle and or give them credit. Um,
right.
but
That's what we do.
back,
We get
we got a little off track. I wanted to
yeah.
talk about what expenses did you encounter in
Uh,
your recent move to retail that you did not anticipate?
Tycam. Um, yeah, Tycam. That's the
What
brutal one.
what's TICAM?
Tycam is the expenses that a center wants to for common ground maintenance.
Oh,
So it's and that is not included in rent anymore. So back in the 1990s to 2000s, that was part of your rent.
hmm,
Today they advertise the rent and promote the rent, and then you go, oh, that's affordable, that's reasonable. They go, oh, and by the way, there's a $680 a month Tycam on top of that, which could be adjusted year to year.
Right. I've never
And
heard it
that,
called TICAM before. We always had, your lease is going to be arbitrarily $1,000 a month plus plus,
right.
and then that means plus, uh, yeah, plus maintenance plus a pass through for HVAC. That was another thing that was part of that
Yeah,
plus plus.
yeah, those things were. It's like, I will say the smartest thing I did this time, and I'm doing a podcast with her later, is, and I don't want to say hired, but I hired a real estate agent, a
Hmm.
commercial real estate agent, and I got to tell you, that was the best move I made. So today, when you're looking for a space, you get on the web and you look. And I did. I got on the web and I looked and I called one of the contact real estate agents and she started talking to me. And, she said that space isn't available anymore. And then she said, "You want me to look for a space for you?" And I was like, "Well, I can't afford to pay somebody to just go looking for space." And she goes, "You don't pay me. The landlord pays me."
Well,
Eh, eh,
I was with some friends looking at a property here recently, and they say, you don't pay me. I call bullshit on that. Realtors, I have to say, realtors occupy a special category in my mind. And, it's funny because I love my corporate lawyer. He's kept my nose clean and kept me out of trouble several times, and I think he's worth every penny I pay him. Which, but the realtors, they say it still comes off the top. That's like believing that your 4% back on your credit card isn't coming out of your own pocket anyway. I think, you know.
Well, I think it depends on the real estate agent because what happened here is we went into almost 3 months of negotiations.
Yeah,
It was crazy. The landlords today, they want documents and paperwork and history and projections. And oh my Lord, every time, we're a business going to rent the space. Yeah, well, what kind of business are you? How much are
yeah,
you doing in volume? And we weren't doing enough to
yeah.
satisfy this landlord. And this girl, Maria, walked me through it every step of the way. And then the lease was 27 pages, I think. She went over that with us bit by bit, threw a bunch of it out, made them throw a bunch of the crap out of the
Hmm.
lease. And then she negotiated, I think it's 5 months of incremental into the lease.
Hmm.
So the first month we had no rent. The second month we have no rent. The third month we pay a partial rent. The fourth month we pay like 50%. The fifth month it's like three quarters. And then it just, and that's what we need. We really need that.
Lets you ease into
Right. Because
the next.
my rent's $3,800 a month and I have 1,400 square feet, which is more than I need by a lot.
Yeah,
But I have a 5-year lease, so I have to grow into the space.
right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So that
there's.
that was an that was not an expense. The deposit, security deposit, and then we paid first month's rent too, which sort of gets offset to like the fifth month's rent or something like that. Um, that was tough.
Are
So I
you
think
gonna
we
go ahead? Sorry, I
no.
interrupted. Thought you.
So
Oh,
I think we had 8,000 in initial down payments.
hmm, wow. Okay, well that's not too bad though, considering the rent is $3,800 a month. So eight
Yeah.
thousand isn't too much of a buy-in. The
Nope.
shit. What was I gonna say? Um, Crap. It went in one side of my headphone and back out the other. It'll come back to me in a minute, probably. So that was an unanticipated cost that you had. What else? I mean, plumbing, electric,
Electric. Oh my
building.
God, electric. Um, I think electric was 5 grand.
Yeah.
Locks, um,
Mhm.
secure commercial locks was $3,000. That
Right.
blew me away.
Right.
A lot of the work we did ourselves. Um, we did a lot of this work ourselves. Honestly, it was a
Hmm.
lot of work.
Yeah.
This was an existing retail business, so it wasn't too bad to convert it. I had a friend donate me some fixtures that he had in his garage, wasn't using.
Mm.
Um, a lot of cleaning and moving. Um, that was those were the biggest expenses, and I think one of the expenses that no one considers, and I had not considered, was the lack of income because we're working on getting a space together instead of making money. So I
Right.
think we lost 2 months income. We had 2 months, it's just nothing came in because we were here all the time working.
Sure, sure. Oh, and those were your free months
Yeah.
where you're moving. Okay, so as soon as you're, well, do you mind? Feel free to say no. I'm not sharing that. But what you, if you feel like sharing it, what's your projected income for your first 12 months there, or your first net sales, not your income?
I think we're hoping to do 200 to 250.
Okay.
So, which would be a pretty big increase from last year. The year before last was better.
Yeah.
But I mean, I look at it this way. I think our average sale is somewhere between it's roughly $3,000. And I know there's a lot of jewelers out there that are working in silver and turquoise and stuff like that, and their average sale is $400, $600.
Hmm.
So it's gonna be a lot harder for them, but they just have to scale everything down. But for me, I'm doing a lot of engagement rings. I'm doing a lot of mother's rings. So pretty high end stuff. So I only need to make two more sales a month to cover this expense. That's the
In
way we look.
in terms of custom jobs per month, what
Yeah.
does that come down to?
Uh,
How
no,
many
I
how
mean
many
just
how many custom jobs a month will it take to sustain this if your average is
to
3,000 bucks?
sustain it.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I don't know the exact number. Whoa. Well, we do have a situation that where we do some trade work for a couple of the stores. So that's some income.
All right.
But I would say, like I say, we just need to increase what we were doing by two customs a month to cover the expense. But I think this year we'll probably, once we get into the groove, probably do four extra customs a month
Hmm.
because that's about right. I think we took in two this month, or should I say December, that were because of the location.
All right.
So that's headed in the right direction. So I think we want to do four customs a week, five customs a week.
Okay.
So
Four is
that's
about
what we're looking at.
25. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to a place where, well, I always, I, I never broke into the $1 million clientele in the $1 million jobs. And actually, I mean, frankly, I
Don't.
I was going to say every extremely high end client I had was the biggest pain in the ass in the world. I'd rather sell, you know, $1,500 to $3,500
All
commitment
day long.
rings to young couples all day long
All day long.
than have one pain in the ass client that just won't go away. you know, I mean, and shit, I love everybody that I work for, I guess, when it came right down to it. But yeah, that people think that they want to break into that market. I'm not 100% sure that's the best way.
I've done $3 million pieces.
Mhm.
Um, I've done several pieces that were in the 700,000 range.
Mhm.
You make 15,000, 10,000 on the $3 million piece.
Right.
I mean, on $1 million piece, but it isn't worth it
You
because
know,
the
and
risk is so high.
you
So
can a $10,000 piece, you can make a much higher profit
right,
margin in a situation
right.
like that. Yeah.
And if something goes south, it's not that things go south, but I remember I was building an engagement ring for a woman that owned a yacht club,
Mm.
and I was stressed about it because she lived on a sailboat, and the diamond was retail. The center diamond was retail about 700 something thousand.
Jeez.
and I am setting it in a platinum mounting that it's $180,000, $200,000 mounting, and I'm and her husband's watching me. So I'm tapping the prongs down, and all I can think of is this diamond ain't coming out of this ring ever.
Mm,
And so I've got a little punch and a hammer just tighten things up just right.
mhm.
And it's a cushion cut, which is worse because cushion cuts tend to wiggle and woggle out.
Yeah, yeah, they
And the
can.
guy's looking over my shoulder and he says, "What happens if you slip?"
Oh, Jesus.
That had not crossed my mind, and I had to stop and get up and walk out of the store
Yeah,
because, this is a 700 something $1,000 diamond. What happens if I slip?
yeah,
You know, um, so yeah, you get that. You get
there's
that situation.
right,
You can sweat a little bit.
right.
Uh, you
Well,
know,
here's a question: did she bring you the diamond, or did you sell it to
it, she brought me the diamond.
her?
I was actually working with another jeweler, so they were working with a jeweler in their town, and they contacted. I'll just say it. They contacted Stuller. The
Oh,
jeweler contacted Stuller
right.
and said, "Okay, I've got this diamond. Who should set it?" And Stanley Zale said, "You got to take it to Joel."
Yeah.
So he drove the diamond to me. They came with it. I built the mounting for it. Um, at the time I was really close to Stuller and all those people there, and yeah, and I thought that was interesting that in all of New England and the New York area they brought it to me. So I
Well,
got stuff like that a lot actually,
right.
because in the
Um,
trade I'm pretty well known.
price list. Here it is. I was just gonna. It brings to mind. I have some policies statements on my price list for that you need to evolve if you're going to be retail venue for sure. But uh, oh, here's the very first one. The very first policy is any gym other than ours will be set at customer's risk only unless otherwise detailed in writing.
Yeah,
Stone setting insurance is available and it's advised in the case of valued item. So in other words, if I sold him the stone, I would guarantee it would survive. I would guarantee that it would make it to delivery. But I did not make that guarantee for stones that I didn't sell. Um, it that only came up a couple of times.
yeah.
But you can get setting insurance. Lloyd's of London will insure just about anything. So if somebody brings you, a well, shit, even a $3,000 emerald, but especially $150,000 emerald, for example, and they want you to set it in a $150 setting, the you get the liability to profit ratio there isn't quite justified. And so that's another thing. Here's another policy that I had that I just absolutely loved, and I got this from an old, like it was ancient, decades ago when I started writing these policies, and that is uh, oh, absolutely no guarantee for any work on previously swindled goods.
Oh wow.
And
You know,
okay, that somebody brings you something for retipping, right? And so you don't know, you go into it using proper techniques and hard solder, platinum, whatever you're doing, and somebody rebuilt the prong with soft solder and it just melts down.
I,
So
I'll give you worse than that.
okay,
And, and if you're a young jeweler and you want to have your own space and you want to do this, this is something you really have to look out for. I've had this in my life twice. My Bonnie and I have had this happen. We were in the little pottery shop, the 100 square feet. So I had my Meiji microscope there, and this lady comes in and she's got, I think it was a 3 carat diamond, and she wanted to know if we could redesign it because she was tired of the mounting and wanted something to. And I said, sure, sure. And I looked at it under the microscope and I see the rainbow flash, and I'm going, oh. I'm happy to do this. I do want you to realize, though, you do realize this is a Yehuda Clarity Enhanced Diamond.
Hmm.
A what?
Yeah. Oh,
What do you mean? It's a what? I mean, I hadn't even taken it in. She was just showing it to me. We were just
right.
looking at it. She picks up the phone and gets on the phone with her husband, and that was a very awkward conversation. And we're
Oh,
right there listening to her. But here's the scary part. Let's say I didn't recognize that it was a Clarity Enhanced Diamond.
yeah.
Okay. And let's say I don't even hurt it. I don't do
Hmm.
anything wrong to it because if you heat that, you can hurt the filling.
Right.
But let's say I don't. Let's say I'm really careful. I give her the ring. She loves it. And then, but her husband's like, yeah, but I don't know about that jeweler in the little 100 square foot space in the pottery shop. We should go see if everything's cool. She goes to another jeweler. The other jeweler says, hey, this is a Yehuda. Do they come back and accuse me of swapping the diamond, or does the
Hmm.
husband confess?
Right. 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 Yeah. Those kinds of things, take-in procedures are hugely important in a retail scenario. I mean, they're important always, but they become more important when you're talking to 50 people a day and taking their jewelry in. Don't get in a hurry. Look at the stuff.
Yep.
Make sure when you take in a repair, loop the shit out of it. Make sure the diamond's not already damaged or whatever gem is in there is not already damaged. Make sure that the repair you're doing is the only thing it needs because if you don't mention it,
Yeah.
then they're going to come back in two
You
weeks
own
and
it.
said, well, and it's really weird because if you take your car into the muffler shop and get the muffler repaired, and uh, and then the brakes fail 2 weeks down the road, does the customer go back to the muffler shop and say, "Hey, my brakes failed"? Well, they do that with jewelry. You retip a single tip or something like that, then three other tips fail because it was previously swindled. And anyway, those are some of the pitfalls.
But let's
Listen,
get back to talking about going to a space. So
okay,
uh,
yeah, sorry.
I think you get somebody who's working out of the garage. They're a hobbyist jeweler. They want to escalate. I think shared spaces is a good idea.
Hmm.
Um, you know, like or doing tables. Um, one of the things that we do is we've got books and books of pieces that I've done in the past
Hmm.
that we put out on a table sometimes, and people just flip through and they go, "Oh, you could do this, you could do this." So we get business from that. But I think that get into your own space. First of all, you have to have a space for your workshop.
Hmm.
So why can't that space be accessible to clients? And unless you just don't like talking to people, and then how do you have why not have the visible space,
Well,
right?
let's clarify. I don't think I'd want retail clients walking around inside my workshop, but have it visible. That was when I built out my retail store in downtown, the third one, the one I lasted longest in. It
Well,
was,
see here, you can see here we've got a place for customers,
yeah, there you go.
and that's Bonnie, and then behind me is Jeremy, and then we've got the whole rest of the space here
Yeah.
uh, for
What?
working, and we're also planning on opening up 4 spaces for students here, so we're gonna have like a small scale school.
Right.
Um, so oh, we got a customer in here now.
Okay.
So
Can you
yeah,
go ahead? Are you okay to go?
yeah, I'm fine.
All right. Um, what else do we need to discuss that we haven't already? We've been going, what, 45 minutes almost, um,
Yeah,
which is long enough for a podcast, I guess.
okay, that's fine.
Um, anything else you want to admit or admit? Anything, any crimes you would want to admit to? No. Anything else you can think of quickly? One thing I would like to do is some shameless self promotion since we
Okay.
don't yet have sponsors for this podcast. We're once again, I'd like to say if you find anything, even some of the jokes, stupid jokes we sell, if you think they're funny, if there's any useful content here for you, please like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm. I'd like to keep this whole series of podcasts that I'm going to do free for the audience. And again, in terms of shameless self promotion, I'm a Rhino reseller, and a accredited Rhino trainer. And I do have a live stream class coming up starting the 9th of February. I got a bunch of Portland Jewelry Academy students in the class, but I have room for a few more seats for people if you want to go to the Rhino Jewelry CAD website and get signed up. There's still time and there's still a couple of seats left if you'd like really high quality um, Rhino training. And I can sell you Rhino too if you don't already have it. Actually, I have a package there that saves you $100 off the total of both training and Rhino itself. So I'd love to work with you in terms of helping you level up your game in CAD. Okay, Joel, you got anything you want to promote real quick?
Yeah, we'll be getting our classes going come late spring,
Okay.
and we'll be teaching people the things that they need to know to open their own retail business and bench jewelry skills. A lot of focus on hand engraving and stone setting is my favorite thing. So we
I,
pushing stone setting. And Gary, your class is great. I took it myself, so
yeah, that's right. And I think we discussed maybe you feeding some of your students into my CAD
yep,
class as well at some
we'll
point.
be doing that.
All right.
All
Well,
right, I'm
unless
gonna go
there's
help
something
my
else.
customer. I'll talk
Okay.
to you guys later.
All
All right.
right. Thanks a lot, Joel. Talk to you soon. Bye. Okay. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. All right. Bye bye.